Hi everyone. Thank you for joining yet another edition of Let's Talk Design. We have a very special guest who's going to join us shortly. I hope you all can hear me. I'm sorry, I won't be able to accept any other requests to do for the Instagram live. I'm only going to be waiting for our special guest for today. Yes, and I think they're right here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Hope everyone is safe and so happy to finally get back to work and
I
talk about
know.
work.
Yes, absolutely. It's so good to be able to talk to people and talk about things other than what is happening outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Sanjana, for being here with us. I'll keep it short and sweet, and I'll straight away first introduce you to our audience. I'm sure they're all waiting. So we have Sanjana Mathur from Studio Bipolar with us today. A quick introduction to Sanjana. Sanjana is a co-founder of Studio Bipolar. She's an architect from Sushant School of Art and Architecture and is one of the top 50 young designers in the country, as per iGen 50, which is published by Architect and Interiors India magazine. Studio Bipolar is a multidisciplinary firm founded in 2016, committed to excellence in customized architecture and design, with projects ranging from residential, commercial, hospitality, etc. Studio Bipolar focuses on creating spaces that are functional, aesthetically pleasing, intellectually rigorous, and a unique reflection of the values that drives the studio. So thank you, Sanjana. It's an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
We have a few questions for you, and then we'll be taking some questions from the audience. So we'll be talking about designing commercial and luxury residential spaces with stone. If anybody has any pertinent questions, please drop them in the comment box, or there's a question mark at the bottom of your screen. You can just drop in your questions there. I'll be taking them after about 15 to 20 minutes. So my first question to you, Sanjana, is you've done a wide range of residential and commercial projects, right? So what are the different ways in which one can use stone when it comes to these types of projects?
So I think in all these projects since time immemorial, like people have just been using stone on like floors and bathrooms and stuff. I think a new way of utilizing stone, especially in residential spaces now to, just use different textures. Like I think people were just sort of sticking to just, very glossy, polished sort of surfaces, and now it's more about exploring the texture. So, using marble, but like using a rough sort of finished marble, or using a matte sort of a way, and then doing it on the walls or doing it on the ceiling, is and using it with a combination of different materials, like whether it's a metal inlay or semi-precious stones or whatever, or wood or whatever. So it's a combination of several elements, but also just exploring stone in a new way. Which I think is opening up a lot of different avenues when it comes to stone.
So could you share a couple of examples in which you have used stone in sort of different ways?
So right now, for example, like I think in one of our farmhouse projects that we've just sort of wrapping up, the minute you enter into the entrance foyer, right? So we have like a polished stone floor, but we've also done carried forward the stone onto the wall behind the entrance console, and we've done it in a book match way so that the veins of the marble are meeting in such a way that is forming a pattern in itself. So obviously it's looking very luxe, but then the lighting combined with the lighting, it creates a very luxurious and very sort of soothing effect as soon as the guest enters. So that way, like obviously marble has always been used since time immemorial to create a very grand sort of look, but then we were starting to use marble to create cozy sort of looks as well. And that is something I think that we're starting to explore. Also, like in another farmhouse project that we're doing right now, we're also using stone in a rough sort of hydro finish that is kind of just water blasted. So we're using that as a surround for a fireplace. which is there in like the recreational sort of theater, home theater area, which is, and it's again, like it's not super well lit. It's a very moody, very cozy sort of vibe, but it gives it a very different look. It doesn't look like the regular marble. So actually, when people see it, they're like, is this marble? But it is marble. So it's a
Right.
very different avenue that we're trying to explore.
Right, right. So we've seen your portfolio and you use a lot of light and subtle colors. Your color palette
Mhm.
is very, very, you use a lot of whites, subtle colors, neutral palettes to create openness. How do you think stone helps in achieving this sort of quality?
I think the thing is, obviously, like you said rightly, that lighting is key and color is key, but it's also the materials that you use and how they reflect the light, which is, very important. And that's why stone is something that is a wonderful material to work with because there's so much variety in stone, and the way it reflects the light really changes the way a space is perceived. So if you have, for example, a double height space and I use like a polished stone, which is like maybe a beige color, and I'm using it on the walls and on the floor and everything, it's going to give it a very hotel lobby kind of look, right? Like, lots of just high glossy sort of effect. But if I use this in the same space, I do like maybe a dark sort of tobacco brownish color, but I do it like a water blasted finish.
Right.
And then the lighting I change, I make it a little warmer, a little more moodier, a little dimmer. It's going to give a completely different look. So it's obviously it's not, I don't think you can look at stone in a vacuum. It has to be a combination of several elements. But the stone is actually kind of a key thing in how a space is perceived, how you treat it and what kind of stone you pick.
Right. So, in residential projects, the requirement is often to create luxury spaces, classy corners, right? What are the trends currently, in residential
Mhm.
projects? And especially when it comes to flooring, you said, you've done walls. What is new? Tell us what is new and what is new with stone.
So right now, what I'm proposing is obviously, people love using different stones and different finishes on the stone. One is that, like exploring marble not as like a polished surface, but as a three-dimensional surface in which you can do carving, in which you can do lots of different inlays, things like that. Also using stone in not just the walls and the ceilings, but also on walls and flooring, but also like decorative elements. So whether it's like a stone sculpture or whether it's like the base of a floor lamp, which could be a block of solid marble. That in itself is a different way of exploring it, and it gives a different, element to the room altogether.
Right, right. Could you share specific stones that work very well for residential projects and for also for
Hmm.
different elements in homes?
So I really love like, it's kind of done to death, but I really love like a classic Satwario, like that I think is something that's timeless. And if you do sort of different, textures on it and different treatments on it, I think it's something that can just look something that hasn't been seen before, so and then using that as a solid block, in as a table or as the base of a floor lamp or something like that, that in itself looks classy and really really luxurious and really something that hasn't been done before, or not a lot of people are doing it. And then I really like Paradiso, for example, that's one of my favorite stones. I also love like I also love Indian marbles, like I feel is really making a huge comeback. At least I hope it does, because Indian marbles are something that, there's so much variety. And I feel like it also depends on the client's taste. Sometimes they want to say that, we've used Italian marble and we've used this kind of marble, but I always try to show them that, there's so much variety available in our country and it can give a completely different look that hasn't been seen anywhere on Pinterest or any whatever you're looking at. So I really try to use a lot of Indian sandstones and Jaisalmer yellow and teak stones and things like that. So it gives a completely different look altogether.
Right, right. So when you're picking up stone, right, for whether it's residential or commercial projects, and what are the qualities that you look for? And if because today we are specifically talking about commercial and residential projects, if you could sort of give us some tips, especially for
Hmm.
the audience, as to what one should keep in mind when they're looking for stones in commercial spaces and when they're using stones in residential spaces.
So for me, like our design process is very, very heavy on, the visual and the graphic nature of a space. So the first thing that I really look at is, the color. like the color and the various colors, of course, because it's a natural product. There's so many different colors in a single slab. So the colors are what's really important. So even if you're going for a gray, you'll get gray marbles with like, yellow veining, and you'll get gray marbles with white veining. So there's so many different varieties in that. And each choice will give it a different sort of look. So you have to find the correct stone, no matter whatever it is, Indian, Italian, luxury, low end, whatever. It has to have the correct sort of color palette. It has to go with everything else that I'm planning. That's number one. Number two is like how versatile it can be, because a lot of stones, people, for example, people will say that, okay, fine, this stone is very suitable for this, but it's not so suitable, for using it as a tabletop, perhaps. It's only suitable for using it as maybe on the wall or on the floor or whatever, or as an inlay material. So versatility is again something else, because I like to take, like, if I selected a stone, I like to not just use it on the floor, but I like to use it as an accent, in maybe another room, so to sort of create a sense of cohesiveness throughout the whole
Right.
home. So that is also something else. So versatility is very important. And then third, something that just I love to see the pattern, like how that particular slab, like how could we cut it, how could we work with the stonemason to sort of lay it in a different way, something that would be unique. And the pattern that is there in that particular slab of stone will determine how that pattern is perceived. So that is again something that, these are the three main things that I really look at, that really changes the way a space and that particular stone is perceived.
Right, right. So, commercial spaces, especially stores, retail stores, and basically spaces that get very high
Yeah.
traffic. What are the tips that you would give to our audience when you're designing such spaces? What should they keep in mind?
So I would say, first of all, just pay attention to the scale of the space. If it's a very small retail space or like a medium-sized retail space, then you have to be very particular as to where you use stone, So it might not make sense to use it on the floor, because if it's really tiny, then, people, if there's footfall in the store, it won't even be visible, And anyway, marble, you have to be careful where you use it. So I would use it on maybe like just the billing desk, like a place which is going to be highlighted really well. And that people are always going to be seeing it from the outside, and again, so when in retail, like visibility is key. Like obviously the product has to show, but then the store as a whole has to look attractive. So when you're outside, like, staring into the store, what is the first thing that you see? And use something like an impressive material like stone there, so whether it's a backsplash, or whether it's the back of a display, or whatever, whether it's the base of a mannequin, whatever you see first, that should be the place where you choose to do something that's, really stands out and really pops.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't think about that quite often, but
Yeah.
okay, great, thank you. So if you had to pick, one stone that you would definitely sort of work with in commercial spaces, and if you had to pick one stone that you would work with in residential spaces, what would be like
Okay.
an easy, with your eyes shut, you can trust this stone and sort of go ahead with? What would that be?
Hmm. Oh, that's a hard choice. So in residential, I would for sure go for maybe like a tobacco brown or something. I don't know. Like I'm finding clients who want to go with like very light colors and they're obsessed with Safari, but I'm obsessed with darker colors. And I want to go for like, like maybe an NSL, or I want to go for a tobacco brown, something which has, really interesting veins, and, I can basically just wrap it around everywhere, on the floor, walls, everywhere, and just sort of create a, and then maybe have a mirrored ceiling to just kind of make it look very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
That would be something that I've done that also in a residential bathroom, in a master bathroom, where I took an as Nero Saint Laurent, and I just did it everywhere, and I did a mirror ceiling, and it looked amazing. And then in commercial, I think I would want to go with, I don't know, it's a weird choice, but I would actually want to play around with travertine, because I just feel like when it's done on the walls and when you light it properly, like I think whatever product you put against it, say if you're talking about a retail place, whatever product you put against it will look good, because it's got such a nice texture. It's got dimension without being overpowering. So I think it would actually be really interesting. Just instead of having a white wall behind a display, you could have a travertine.
Right. Okay, very, very interesting. You spoke about bathrooms, and I'm going to ask a
Yeah.
question that we actually get on, on this conversation very often. What should one keep in mind when they're using stones in bathrooms?
I think Obviously, like, moving past the concept that you have and the color and everything, I think one really needs to pay attention to just how you're fixing it. I think the joinery in between stone, like where like two pieces meet, what is happening at that joint, where two angles meet, like if a stone is meeting at a 90-degree angle, what happens at that joint, and what happens, how are you cutting it, how are you fixing it, how are you just basically playing with it. I think that is something that is often lost, and people just say that, oh, just pick a stone and do whatever treatment and just stick it on there. But I feel like if you can play around with the grooving or the cutting or the chamfering, I think it can really elevate a very simple stone as well.
Yeah.
So you need to work with your stone mason, you need to go on site, you really need to think about how you could do it.
Okay, okay, great. So I think this has been very, very useful, Sanjana. I will ask you the last question,
Okay.
and then we have one more thing which we close the session with.
All right,
The
okay.
last question is, if you had to pick one stone that resonates with your personality, what would that be?
I think, well, our my firm name is Bipolar, so I'll have too many too many selections, which will all be at odds with each
So
other.
you can give us two selections. That's
Yeah.
fine.
So right now, I think so my tastes keep changing. Right now, I think I'm really channeling, actually, like, on one hand, I'm channeling like limestones, like just solid blocks of limestones, as maybe as like a fireplace, or as a just a block as a coffee table or something like that. And on the other hand, I'm also channeling like gold satwario. So it's a very different sort of look, but I actually want to use both of these things in one space. Just like a wall which will have a gold satwario on like maybe 90% of it, and then maybe 10% like I could have like maybe just a 9-inch skirting in like limestone. I just want to find someone that will let me do that.
I wish I could say yes to that. I
Yeah.
think it sounds really interesting and truly
Yeah, like
reflective
I
of the
think it would be really
bipolar,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
so
ideology. Yeah, yeah. So great, great. Good luck, Sanjana. I hope you get to fulfill all your aspirations of creativity with stone. We really this year A class has finished. Actually, last year when we started the series, we finished 50 years of A class being in the industry, and as a gesture of gratitude for you being a part of this journey, they'll be planting a tree on your behalf. So
oh
thank
wow.
you. And they'll be sending you a certificate as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing such deep insight into the world of stone. And good luck. We can't wait to see some new projects from you.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And as a young designer, I started my journey with A class. For my first project, I actually bought all the stone from A class. So it's really been a journey like we've been on together.
That's great. That's great. I think the team would love to hear that. So thank you very much and stay safe. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.